Southern Ukrainian port city of Odessa was engulfed in flames this week after being struck by a large-scale Russian drone attack. This comes just hours after President Trump had expressed optimism about ending the war.
Delegations from Russia and the U.S. are expected to resume peace talks on Monday. Negotiators will meet in Saudi Arabia following an earlier round of talks in February. Joining us now is Euro-Atlantic security consultant Natalie Melnichuk. Thanks so much for being here. Always good to see you back here on set. So we know that a partial ceasefire was agreed upon. Why are we still seeing violence in the region?
It's really not surprising at all. What a contract, oral or written, or a treaty means to President Putin is completely different from what it means to us. So President Zelensky of Ukraine agreed to an all-out 30-day ceasefire with Russia, and he reported that to President Trump. When President Trump then discussed it with President Putin a few days later, President Putin did not agree to a complete ceasefire. Instead, he put many qualifications on that and conditions, and he came out saying that they would halt infrastructure and energy infrastructure bombing, and would like to discuss possibly halting all sorts of military activity in the Black Sea. That's very conditional, very limited. And after he made that promise to President Trump, within 2 or 3 hours, this was 3 days ago, he started bombing as he does every night. So there were nearly 200 missiles and drones fired at Ukraine that very night, a few hours after he promised to cease bombing infrastructure. He went after electrical grids, power sources, civilian buildings, including hospitals and schools. Those are some of his favorite targets. So we must learn to not take him at his word, and we must prepare for that in the future. Not that a ceasefire is not possible, but he has violated 25 ceasefires since first invading Ukraine in 2014.
And with that kind of pattern, what kind of message does this send? How do we even get to the point where there actually is a ceasefire in place that people actually follow?
Most security experts across the board, and all European capitals, but perhaps Hungary, Budapest, because they have a very Russian-leaning presidency at the moment. But NATO member countries agree across the board that what is needed is for increased military supply to Ukraine. Let Ukraine defend itself. Let it get the job done. Peace through strength. That is what Russia understands. And Russia has been an expansionist invading power its entire history for over 400 years. And Catherine the Great had said, when we are not expanding, we are not alive. And that is their modus operandi. That is what they live for. That is simply not what we seek in the West. So it's really hard to wrap our heads around, but for U.S. national security, for European security, and for Ukraine's security and stability, ultimately, that is what will get Putin to the table, is feeling a serious pushback. Right now, he seems to be getting everything that he's asking for. In the last 2 days, President Trump mentioned dividing assets. And as far as anyone can understand, that means dividing up Ukraine between the U.S. and Russia. So we hope that that isn't what it means. We've yet to see the complete readout on that.
And we know that when he was campaigning, Trump famously said he could end this conflict with one phone call. Now he's learning that that is not the case. This is not so easy. Do you think that we'll see him come around? Because he did shift towards Russia. He did make a shift toward Putin in recent weeks. Do you think we could see him getting frustrated at one point and changing the way he's approaching this?
He might, and he could, and he should, because the United States is the strongest military power, the strongest economic power. And if we put pressure on President Putin to withdraw his troops and go home, the war would be over. President Trump has an extraordinary amount of power to stand with his Western allies, with NATO allies, with Europe, and protect U.S. national interests. If he chooses to do so, then we're really looking at a potential for a ceasefire and the end to this war. But not through weakness. We're not going to see it happen that way.
Yeah, but with the way things have been going, and even with the way President Trump has been handling it, does it appear to be moving in that direction?
It's possible. The rhetoric doesn't match the action. And again, we're not used to that from Washington. So we're all learning to adapt and try to read between the lines. We shouldn't lose hope and optimism, because at the end of the day, the United States and NATO, the other 31 member countries of NATO, we have been partners in 75 years of security and stability in Europe and the US. If President Trump wants to see stability and not war for the United States, let's be clear, that's what's at stake here. If he wants stability to continue and prosperity, then he will need to consider that option. And we can only assume that he was speaking metaphorically when he said he could end the war in 24 days. Wars do not end in 24 days. Everybody knows this. It's usually a 2 to 3 year negotiation in times of modern warfare. So that would be a normal time frame, because ending a war is very complex. Starting a war is not complex. And President Trump will really need to decide, do we stand with our allies, or if we don't, there will be a security vacuum in Ukraine. And security vacuums welcome more aggression. The war will not end. It'll continue, it'll expand, Ukraine will go, and then Europe, all of Europe, is at immediate risk. And Europeans have been gathering now for 3 weeks since President Putin signaled he will not be the one, the US will not be the one to carry and protect Ukraine. Europe needs to stand up and take care of that. And much to their credit, Keir Starmer of the UK, President Macron of France, German President Scholz passing off now to Mr. Merz. They are taking up the mantle. This week alone, they have pledged billions of dollars, 3 billion pounds from the United Kingdom, now going to be added to Ukraine's coffer, both in ammunition produced in Belfast and in some much needed artillery and cash. France is contributing about 4 billion euro, also for technical assistance, military assistance, and they are constructing a coalition of the willing. You have about 20 European countries working together to bring security guarantees to Ukraine, because a just and lasting peace in Ukraine and for Europe means one with strong security guarantees. And we have to hope that President Trump will offer a military backstop to any security forces that Europe puts into Ukraine to maintain the peace and to stand up for the democratic order. Because if you don't have a democracy, you have something far less pleasant than a democracy, where the people have little to no say and a few folks at the top do as they please with the country and its people. So as much as we don't wish that.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight with all of your insight.
Thank you.